Okay, good morning, everybody. Everybody's well. Happy Wednesday. For those that are with us live, thanks so much for being here. Today's a special day on the modern Jewish calendar. It's called Yom HaZikaron, the Remembrance Day, day in which you remember the fallen soldiers and victims of terror in the state of Israel. Yesterday we discussed this concept of survivors and heroes, the narrative of what it means to have overcome the tragedies, and the indication that when someone has such an incredible amount of power, that means that we have it too. It's so important that we don't let anything go by. Holidays are important moments, and these moments, even though they're modern holidays, even though they're holidays that took place really in the modern world, they're still important, I think. And they're important to commemorate and to remember. And what makes them important is that it makes us recognize who we are. Yesterday we discussed this concept. When we see the power in these heroes, these survivors, it reminds us that there's stuff inside us that is beyond what we even think possible. That's my experience. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. At least half of my grandparents are, and when I look at them, I don't just see grandparents. I see I many times in my life, I would talk to my grandparents and be thinking like, how did they do it? And it reminds me that there's more inside me, because that's my grandparents. It's not, I have the same DNA. What we talk about today, and what we're moving for the next two shows, is the idea of sacrifice. Many times in life we want things, and you see this in people, that they want stuff, and they're very clear with what they want, but they're really not willing to sacrifice for it, because they don't appreciate that greatness requires sacrifice. I told the story last year, so for those who were with me for a year, I'm sorry for repeating. Yom HaZikaron, Remembrance Day. When you don't live in Israel, it's hard to appreciate it, but when you do, it's a different game. Today in Israel, it's a different day. The sirens are going to sound. The whole country's going to stop. It's really powerful. I was on a highway once, and everyone just stopped their cars. It's incredible. The highway just stopped the cars. Everyone just stopped their cars and got out for a moment. But to me, the hardest part of that day, once when I was my first year, I spent my gap year in Israel. And then my first year being there, they took us to one of the cemeteries. And I watched a young woman pay respects to her husband, who had just passed away. He was a soldier. And on his tombstone was a little kid giving it a hug. Little boy. Cute little boy. Went right up to the tombstone, put down a rock, and then just jumped on it and gave it a big hug. I'll never forget that scene, that moment. The young widow. She couldn't have been more. She looked like she was in her early 30s, maybe, young 20s, and the little boy. And what dawned on me then, and dawns on me still to this day, what rings in my mind when I still think of that image on today, even though I experienced it 20 years ago, more, 25 years ago, was the concept of sacrifice. Sacrifice. We believe in our homeland and living free. And there are people that were willing to sacrifice for it. There are parents that sent their kids to the army to defend the land. There's wives that said goodbye to their husbands, knowing that they may never see them again. There are little kids that kissed daddy goodbye on the way out, not to work, but to battle. Sacrifice. You don't really have beliefs until you're willing to sacrifice for them. You see this everywhere. Everywhere in Torah, everywhere in our history, you see this. You see this in many histories. I'm sitting here in the United States of America. They sacrificed. There's a lot of people. We don't have, for some reason, at least maybe in other parts of the country, and unfortunately where I guess grew up, Memorial Day didn't have that same power, although it should have. It should have. These are human beings that fought for the honor of this country and provided a land of the free. And they went out to battle, leaving their families back. This happened in the beginning with Abraham. And God asked him to sacrifice Isaac. And what he was doing was teaching him that if you believe in something, you're willing to sacrifice for it. When God asked the Jews to sacrifice the sheep, which was the god of Egypt, putting themselves at incredible risk because they were literally taking the deity of the host country and bringing it into their home. He was teaching them a lesson. If you believe in me, you'll be willing to sacrifice, not because I need it. I don't need animal sacrifice. I don't need human sacrifice. I'm teaching you a lesson, beliefs. You know you believe in something when you're willing to sacrifice for it. That's what belief is. When you're ready to sacrifice your time and effort for a goal, now you're beginning to believe in the goal. You don't really want it. Don't say you want it if you're not willing to sacrifice for it. Don't say you want to be successful. Don't say you want to be healthy. Don't say you want to have a great marriage. Don't say you want your kids to be successful if you're not willing to sacrifice for it. You don't really want it. You're saying it. You don't really believe in it. All throughout our history, you see this. All throughout history, you see this. And every single day, there are people willing to sacrifice. Every day. Today, as we talk, there are young people putting on uniforms and standing on a border, sacrificing their lives for the security of the state of Israel. There are people that are going around the country and doing this. There are wars going on in this world. Right now, as we speak, there's a war going on in Ukraine. Right now. Right now, as we speak, there's somebody. Let's take it down a notch. Forget war for a second. Right now, as you speak, there's some parent waking up at the crack of dawn and going out to work, take all the money and give it to their family. They're sacrificing their time, their sleep, their energy for something else. That's where their belief lies. The more you sacrifice for something, the more you believe in it. It is a self-reinforcing cycle. You believe in something that you sacrifice for, and then when you sacrifice for it, you believe in it more. The story of Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance, is the story of mankind. It's the story of this incredible dream to come back to our homeland after thousands of years of being exiled. But not to come back and assume that when we come back, it'll all be great. To understand that coming back requires extreme sacrifice and to be willing to go through that sacrifice. To be willing. When you have that in your life, when you anticipate that, that's how you begin to have real dreams, to have real aspirations, to have real beliefs, because you can see it so clearly that it's worth the sacrifice. Not because it's a burden to sacrifice, but because it is an honor to sacrifice. We'll explain that. Okay, everybody, have a great day. For those that are today remembering the loss of someone that they know, may you have true comfort from God. May their memory be a blessing. With God's help, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Living on a lifeline, the world doesn't ever seem to change. Looking for the sunshine, but you're caught up in the rain. It's like your eyes are wide open, but you cannot see. You're watching life pass you by like 1, 2, 3. Walking in destruction, the winds of life blur your vision. All the devastation, forever feels like you're on the run. It's time, no one else can set you free. You're locked inside, and only you have got the key.